China built an airport in a place where planes were never supposed to fly. Located in the forbidden zone of the Tibetan plateau, this megaproject is 14,500 feet above sea level.
We made it, 4,411 meters, the highest airport in the world.
Taking off at this altitude is no joke. With 40% thinner air, the engines stall and the pilot's brain gets deprived of oxygen. One mistake and it's all over. Despite that, China managed to build what everyone thought was impossible. Workers poured concrete in sub-zero temperatures. Engineers created a dome that staves off hypoxia. Architects designed a runway unlike any other. This $255 million marvel is China's masterpiece in the sky. But how does this airport operate in such extreme conditions? The Gars Tibetan Autonomous Prefecture, located in the western region of Sichuan Province, is one of the most geographically isolated regions in all of China. As a result, it has historically remained one of the least developed regions in China. And the main reason behind that is the vast mountain ranges, collectively called the Hengduan Mountains, that dominate the landscape. The Hengduan Mountains are gigantic, acting as natural barriers that have proven to be the worst enemies of urban progress. Building roads through them has been an uphill battle, quite literally. Due to the extreme height involved, only narrow passageways can be carved out of the mountainside that have to wind up and down, increasing travel time significantly. Take the journey from Daocheng County in eastern Hengduan Mountains to Chengdu, the closest provincial hub, as an example. For the locals, traveling to Chengdu is a 2-day ordeal in which they traverse dangerous narrow roads carved into cliffs. They must face the constant danger of landslides, and if the weather takes a turn for the worse, they can be stuck for weeks. Certainly not the kind of trip a person would risk without a very good reason. For the locals, the outside world may as well not exist, and the same was true for all 6 counties across the prefecture. Imagine that. 400,000 people living in one of the most advanced nations in the world and not having access to regions outside of their birthplace. For the prefecture, this meant an economic disaster. Industry couldn't thrive, people couldn't get good jobs, and big companies could not enter the local markets to drive up the economy. Everything was stagnating. For someone born in the Hengduan Mountains, access to good education, quality healthcare, and a better life was just an unachievable dream. With a push for a solution from all levels, Chinese officials faced a daunting problem. How do you connect this massive population to urban hubs across the country effectively? Roads were clearly not the answer. Building even the narrowest paths in the rough mountain terrain was far too difficult. A full-scale highway was completely out of the question. Trains faced the same issue. Constructing a straight track for a train through the mountains would take decades to build. By that time, the region would have economically stagnated completely. One thing became clear. Traditional transportation methods were not going to work in the Gars Tibetan Prefecture. And that's when a bold idea began gaining traction. Officials began talking about doing the impossible. They knew that the Hengduan Mountains could not be bypassed effectively by land. So why not just fly over them? While most countries would have passed it off as too difficult, Chinese officials gave serious thought to the proposal. With most traditional methods ruled out, an airport was the perfect way to connect the 6 counties to urban centers around China. It would cut the travel time to Chengdu from 2 whole days to just 1 hour. A massive improvement that would mean an unprecedented level of economic growth for the locals. At the same time, building an airport in the Hengduan Mountains turned out to be a record-breaking achievement in a different way. Since there aren't many suitable locations in the Hengduan Mountains for an airport, experts had to pick a site nearly 14,500 feet above sea level for the project. This officially made the Daocheng Yading Airport the highest altitude airport in the entire world. But while that title certainly sounds impressive, it also means that the Daocheng Yading Airport posed some of the greatest engineering challenges for the experts to figure out. And the first challenge they faced was the thin air. As you probably know, the higher you go, the thinner the air becomes. But what does that mean exactly? Well, as the altitude increases, the air molecules decrease. That means there are fewer air molecules around you in high places like mountains. Now, here is why that is important for Daocheng Yading Airport. Since the project had to be built over 1,000 feet in the mountains, experts had to figure out how this thinner air would interact with the planes that would land and take off from the airport. You see, planes require air to create lift by taking in the air from their surroundings and pushing it out. The more air there is, the more lift is created. And planes need a lot of lift when they are taking off, since that is the most demanding part of the flight process. At sea level, there is plenty of air around to meet that demanding task. But at Daocheng Yading Airport, things got more complicated. At 14,500 feet above sea level, where Daocheng Yading Airport was to be built, the air is 40% thinner compared to sea level. With 40% fewer air molecules around to create lift, getting off the ground becomes far more complicated. The engines work less efficiently, so it takes a longer time for them to generate enough thrust to take off. So how do you counter that effect? Well, since the air density cannot be increased, only one method can allow a plane to take off at such extreme heights, and that is to increase its ground speed right before takeoff. If the plane is moving on the runway faster, it can take off even with thinner air at high altitudes. But that's where the major hurdle lies for the Daocheng Yading Airport. For a plane to have more ground speed, it needs a much longer runway to achieve that speed compared to an airport built at sea level. So, the Daocheng Yading Airport's design had to be modified to include one of the longest runways in the world, at 13,800 feet long. But this design choice wasn't just for takeoff. This longer runway was also crucial for allowing planes to land safely. Air resistance is a major factor that allows aircraft to come to a complete stop while landing. But since Daocheng Yading Airport has 40% thinner air, planes landing must take longer to slow down and stop safely. The longer runway provides planes with more time and space to reverse the plane's thrusters, engage air brakes, slow down, and come to a stop without the risk of running off the runway down a cliff. With this unique design choice, the Daocheng Yading Airport would allow planes to operate at an altitude where they normally would have no chance of doing so. At the same time, however, the longer runway meant a longer project duration, more materials being needed, and a tougher construction process. At sea level, the logistics of that would be challenging enough. But with the Daocheng Yading Airport, they turned 100 times more difficult to deal with. Despite that, the experts decided to go through with the plan, and at last, the construction finally began. A battle on all fronts. At 14,000 feet above sea level, even the simplest things become really difficult. And right off the bat, the Chinese government realized the same would be true for the Daocheng Yading Airport. The first problem they faced was how to create easy access to the site where the airport was to be built. They began by building access roads to the site, carving out paths through the mountains with a higher level of quality compared to normal roads. After all, these roads wouldn't just be used for average traffic. They had to bear the load of heavy machinery, giant trucks carrying construction materials, and fabricated components needed for the project. But the challenge had only begun. Experts quickly realized that the average heavy machinery that tends to be the main driver of a large-scale project would be of no use here. The high-altitude air and the extremely low temperatures meant that engines would choke out quickly, rendering most of the equipment useless. So instead, alternative versions were sourced that could operate effectively in high altitudes for nearly all of the heavy equipment to be used in the construction process. And when these machines reached the plateau, they faced another problem. The soil they had to work with was frozen solid. This wasn't seasonal freezing either. It was permafrost that stayed year-round. There was no way around working with the tougher, rock-solid terrain that presented itself. Despite that, work began on the airport in full by April of 2011. The runway proved to be one of the most difficult parts of the entire project. Across its 13,800 feet length, the entire runway had to be built flawlessly. There could be no weak points that would deteriorate over time and pose a danger in the future for planes. But that was easier said than done. There are many factors that determine how fast concrete dries and what quality it ends up with once it does. For the Daocheng Yading Airport, the most important factor was the temperature. Since the temperature at the site was near freezing, using normal concrete wasn't an option. It would harden too quickly, and water wouldn't evaporate properly, leaving behind empty spaces in the concrete that would reduce its durability significantly. Instead, experts had to figure out a better alternative. In the end, they came up with a cocktail of concrete and antifreeze agents alongside other chemicals that prevented the water within from freezing. This allowed the concrete to set properly and harden without leaving behind air pockets from the water melting away. Figuring out the composition was one thing, pouring out the concrete another. Since the runway at Daocheng Yading Airport was so much longer, it would take equally as much effort to pour concrete in its entire length. And well, the environment the workers had to operate in wasn't exactly normal. The thinner air didn't just affect the machines, it hit the human workers the hardest. With 40% less air to breathe, exhaustion set in much quicker. Many workers would face altitude sickness while working, head pounding in pain, and every breath coming with greater difficulty. Prioritizing workers' health was an ethical obligation, as well as a necessary requirement for the project. If workers fell sick with altitude sickness, it would mean they couldn't work, and progress would be slowed. After careful evaluation, experts came up with a unique way to manage the problem. Workers were put on rotation, ensuring no one worked more than they should in the thinner air. And for those who still suffered altitude sickness, they were provided with immediate care and oxygen facilities to recover. Workers who were most exposed to the thinner air working out in the open for a longer period carried oxygen canisters with them to supplement the air they were breathing. And with these fail-safes in place, the work on the runway proceeded at a good pace. And while that was happening, another team was busy constructing the main terminal of the airport itself. Their task was of even greater significance. An engineering marvel. The main terminal of the Daocheng Yading Airport is one of the most interesting examples of modern engineering and human ingenuity ever built. Created to look like a flying saucer, it isn't just an airport, it is a life pod nestled between gigantic mountains. A safe haven where the punishing environment around it cannot reach, allowing humans to witness the beauty of the surroundings without being at risk. How? The answer lies in the internal infrastructure of the terminal. Engineers knew that once the airport went into operation, passengers would be exposed to the higher altitude environment upon landing. The experts wanted to reduce the effects of that as much as possible. So they incorporated it into the design philosophy of the terminal. Every corner, every hall, every corridor was made to prevent altitude sickness. While airports are usually gigantic, involving a lot of walking for the passengers, the Daocheng Yading Airport is the opposite. The facilities within are carefully located to minimize the walking distance for passengers. This way, none of the visitors have to overexert themselves, preventing exhaustion from the thinner air. On top of that, the air pressure and oxygen levels within the terminal are carefully managed through a special pressure management system built within the structure. This way, the passengers get to breathe a more oxygen-rich air compared to the outside. But still, if someone does get altitude sickness, there are oxygen stations dotting the terminal, allowing them to recover quickly. Another unique design choice for the Daocheng Yading Airport is its panoramic view of the surroundings. The airport has windows on all sides, providing a beautiful view of the landscape, and this has a unique purpose. The landscape provides a way for the passengers to ground themselves. This prevents confusion, which is a common symptom of hypoxia that some passengers are likely to experience at such altitudes. Another way the Daocheng Yading Airport manages this problem is through much clearer signage throughout the terminal. All the signs are brightly colored and easy to spot, so any confused passenger can figure out more easily where they need to go. As a last precautionary method throughout the airport, emergency services and facilities are built to provide urgent care to any serious hypoxia cases that arise. At the end of the day, however, the terminal didn't just have to be safe, it also needed to be comfortable and relaxing. which is why special techniques were used to ensure heat retention within the building. The windows around the terminal are UV ray blocking, but at the same time allow natural light to pass through, which helps heat up the structure. This is crucial for the low-temperature environment. The airport is built to keep the travelers warm and comfortable. Aside from that, there is also the visual marvel of the terminal. Shaped like a saucer, it almost appears to be floating in the air. The illusion is further enhanced by the raised edges of the building and by the fact that the entire thing is located close to the mountaintop. Like an alien mothership that has landed within nature, standing out as something unique and eye-catching from the outside. The challenging flight. With the construction process of the Daocheng Yading Airport completed, the airport started operation in 2013. But that didn't mean just any plane could land here. Rather, a whole protocol had to be figured out, and special precautions were taken to ensure the safety of the pilots and the passengers, as well as guaranteeing smooth operations. The centerpiece of this safety protocol is one of the most advanced weather monitoring systems in the world. The special-made system is designed specifically for the unique environment and weather system of the airport. At Daocheng Yading Airport, the high altitude makes the weather chaotic at times. Wind directions change in a moment, high-speed wind makes flying unsafe, and clouds can appear suddenly, reducing visibility. The weather management system helps mitigate the risks from these dangerous environmental factors. Using its advanced sensors, it predicts and identifies weather phenomena that could affect normal flight operations. This provides the pilots and air traffic controllers with the information they need to operate in the dangerous region surrounding the airport. And as an added precaution, planes mostly operate in the morning here when the weather is the most stable. Once it is afternoon, the weather becomes more unpredictable, and air traffic is stopped. While that does mitigate some of the risks, extra steps are still needed to ensure safety. That is why most pilots aren't even allowed to fly to the Daocheng Yading Airport. Only veteran pilots who are judged capable of handling the pressure of such a difficult flight are selected for the route, ensuring they have the right experience and skills to handle the unique challenge. Plus, every pilot undertaking the route must have a special certification needed to take off and land planes at high altitudes. The planes are loaded with fewer passengers and luggage to reduce weight and ensure a smoother takeoff. During the critical landing and takeoff sections of the flight, pilots are required to wear oxygen masks to ensure they have perfect clarity. This way, they don't suffer hypoxia during a critical moment, which may cause them to make the wrong decision. Every step of the special protocol for Daocheng Yading Airport is designed to reduce as much risk and confusion as possible. At this airport, the stakes are always much higher. A botched landing or takeoff will almost certainly be fatal due to the cliffs surrounding the airport. A pilot failing to land may not get a second chance due to the surrounding mountains and the thinner air reducing lift. And in case of an emergency, help may not be able to arrive as quickly as needed due to the difficult terrain. Despite all these hurdles, experts have figured out how to make one of the most dangerous airports in the world into a well-traveled safe route. Because of that, the Daocheng Yading Airport has become a symbol of human ingenuity. It is a testament to how engineering can allow planes to fly where they were never supposed to. But this megaproject is also something much more than a marvel. It is a hope for a community that had none. Broken walls. The Daocheng Yading Airport proved to be a groundbreaking project for the Garzi Tibetan Autonomous Prefecture. It changed the lives of residents of the 6 counties within the prefecture who, until now, had no reliable and quick means to interact with the big urban centers across China. With the construction of the airport, everything changed. New businesses could move in and bring in economic benefits. Residents could go and find jobs more easily in the nearby cities for better opportunities. They could take advantage of better healthcare and facilities presented to them. Overnight, their lives changed. They were no longer stuck behind a wall of the treacherous mountains that had acted as a jail for hundreds of years. The 2 days of potentially deadly commutes turned into safe and short 1-hour flights. While life certainly got so much easier for the locals, they also benefited in another way. With easy access to the prefecture, tourism has been on the rise since the airport's opening. Hordes of visitors come to experience the thrill of flying to the highest altitude airport in the world. From there, they go on to experience the natural beauty of the Garza Tibetan Autonomous Prefecture, which so far has been a hidden gem. The new airport has allowed more people to visit the Yachting Nature Reserve, which is considered one of the most beautiful nature reserves in China. And with this boom in tourism comes another piece of good news. More tourists mean more money is being spent in the region, giving local businesses a massive boost in revenue, helping drive up the region's economy. As a result, new businesses have popped up, and new urban projects are planned to keep up with the growing tourism. All this thanks to one single airport built where no one thought planes could even operate. But the big question is this really as good a thing as it sounds? Because many experts have raised concerns about the impact of so much human activity on nature and the environment. While the region did get some tourists in the past, the numbers were usually limited due to the tough-to-navigate routes preventing most people from daring the drive. But now, due to the airport, that number has increased overnight. As a result, experts believe the local ecosystem could be disturbed due to the side effects of tourism, such as littering, noise, and urban development, at the risk of destroying nature. The Daocheng Yading Airport is turning into a double-edged sword. While it has breathed new life into the region's economy, it also has the potential to destroy what makes the prefecture so special. With that, we are done for today. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next one.